Hello guys, this is Chetan Mehta from Skill Incubator, and in today's session we'll take a look at what is Agile Business Analysis. Now before I start talking about the Agile Business Analysis, let's first understand the concept Agile. It's very important to understand the term Agile before we start talking about Agile Business Analysis. Now Agile in very simple terms means your flexibility to adapt to the changing environmental conditions. How flexible are you to change when the environmental conditions within which you operate change? It's as simple as that. Now, if you use the same concept into the IT domain, it boils down to how flexible is your process to the changing needs and requirements of your customers without impacting the project budget, that's a cost, your schedule, that is the number of days or months or years you will be taking to deliver the project, and the last thing and the most important thing is the quality of the product you are going to deliver to the customer, right? So how flexible is your process to adapt to the changing needs and requirements of your customers without impacting the project cost, your schedule, and the quality of product you will be giving to your customer. So Agile is more of a mindset, and within the Agile mindset, or you can say Agile umbrella, you have different types of models or frameworks, you can say. Now there are many different Agile methodologies, but we'll just go over some of them. Like the most important and the most applicable in today's environment is Scrum, and there are many more like Crystal, Kanban, XP, which is Extreme Programming, Feature Driven Development, FDD, DSDM, RUP, Rational Unified Process, and there are many more. So again, Agile is a generic term. It's like saying a car, and within the car you have different types of cars. You have Toyota, you have Hyundai, you have Honda. Each one of these cars will have its own design, have its own style, make, traits, characteristics. Same thing with the Agile concept. Agile is a concept. Within the Agile umbrella, you have different types of models, frameworks, and we'll just focus on one of that today. And again, if you want a very thorough explanation of Scrum, I have another video. You can just YouTube and go through that. So we're talking about the Agile Business Analysis. Now I'm talking more from a Scrum perspective. What is the business analyst doing in a Scrum environment? Because many people ask me this question that we don't have any role in Scrum. There is no role of a business analyst in Scrum. In fact, there is no such title in Scrum. If you look at the literature of Scrum, they don't give any titles to anyone, be it a business analyst or a developer or a tester or an architect. You don't have any titles, but still somebody has to play the role of those functions. So the business analyst is not going anywhere, so don't get scared. In fact, now the role of a BA is much more challenging, and it's equally much more rewarding. So let me explain how and why. So the main role of a BA in Scrum environment is to work with the product owner to groom the backlog. Sometimes the business analyst can also play the role of a proxy PO, right? So that's number one. So the PA will be focusing more in the product backlog grooming sessions, working directly with the PO, product owner, your customer representative, working with him or her to groom the backlog, understand the business requirements, and converting them into the system level requirements. That's where 70 to 80% of the time will be spent in this activity. And this is one of the most important activities in the whole framework, because if you don't get this thing nailed down to what the system needs to support from a user's perspective, the team will not be able to build the right product. So this is a very important phase of the Scrum, where the BA will be playing one of the most important roles in understanding the needs, converting them into the business level requirements, and then writing the stories which will be used by the team to design, develop, and test the system. The second most important role of a business analyst is in the sprint planning meeting. So what happens in the sprint planning meeting is the business analyst will be giving a walkthrough of all the requirements of all the user stories to the sprint team. And any of the questions or concerns the team has, that means this developer, tester, or any other person in the team has, must be answered by the BA and resolved in that meeting, because if those questions are not resolved, the team will not know what to build and the code may not be correct, and basically the product will not be built based on the actual needs and requirements of the customers. So the team may have to work very closely with the BA in this meeting and identify all the gaps or all the questions, concerns they have, and the BA is the main point of contact to answer all those questions. Now if the BA may not know some of the questions or the answers to the questions, but still he or she is the point of contact the team should be reaching out to. Now when the sprint is up and running, right, that means the sprint is on, whether it's 1 week or 4 weeks, again the team may have some questions, they may come up with some new questions, or they may identify some gaps, and that's always the case. So again, the BA is the person who will be working very closely with the sprint team to resolve those issues, whether it's a missing requirement or whether it's a gap in the requirement or it's a conflicting requirement, right? Whatever it is, the BA will be playing a role here, more of a supportive role, to make sure that this team has everything which they need to continue towards the completion of the sprint. So these are three main areas where the BA will be focusing. The most important is your product backlog grooming, where the BA is working with the PO, understand the requirements, groom the backlog. Second one is give the requirements walkthrough session in this meeting. Explain what the stories are, what the acceptance criteria is, and then make sure that the team understands what they need to build, how they need to test. And then when the sprint is on, the BA is more of a supportive actor here. He or she is playing more of a supportive role, fielding any questions or concerns the team has and making sure that they are marching towards the goal of the sprint. Of course, in addition to that, the BA must be available in all the three different ceremonies, which is the daily scrum meeting, sprint review meeting, and the sprint retrospective meeting. All of these three ceremonies, the BA should be there. Now in this slide, it's more about what is value team and what is the delivery team. Now the value team is working more from the business side, right? So the value team is responsible for understanding the needs of your customers, understanding the business process flows, the business requirements, and based on that, write down the stories or whatever document you're writing which can help the team to design, develop, and test the system. So basically, in a nutshell, you are understanding the needs of your customers, you're writing down the business requirements or at least understanding them, and then you are drilling them down into the system level requirements so that the team can design, develop and test the system. So the main person in this value team is the product owner. Your business analyst will be another important person. You may have a compliance team or a policy group which must be part of your value team. And then if you have a PMO, a program manager, or any other PMO who is basically overseeing all the different Scrum projects, then they must be part of your value team. Now your delivery team consists of those people who are actually doing the hands-on coding, testing, design of the system. So here in the delivery team, one of the most important team member is your Scrum Master, because he or she is responsible for making sure that the team, the entire sprint team is committed, it's moving towards a common goal of the sprint. Your developers, the main people who are actually doing the coding, you're writing the code. Your tech lead, solution architect, again, they are part of your delivery team. Your testers, who are responsible for testing the system. Is your system working as per the requirements given by the BA and the PO? Is system having any defects, gaps, bugs, right? So the testing team will be doing that work. So your delivery team is more focused towards delivering the software at the end of the cycle, that is the end of the sprint. And the value team is focused more towards grooming the backlog, understanding the requirements, writing the user stories, acceptance criteria. Now, I've just compared the different agile frameworks. Now, of course, in the interest of time, we don't have much time to go over all of these. But if you see any of these models, the agile models, whether it's XP, Scrum, DSDM, feature-driven development, ADS, or Crystal, they have something different. There is something unique in each one of these. But at the end of the day, the basic tenets of all of these different SDLC models is to adapt to the changing needs and requirements of the customers without impacting the project cost, schedule, and the quality of work. Now, I'll be making one short video just explaining this slide. So just stay tuned and look for that. Now in this slide, we'll talk about what are the different elicitation techniques the BA can use, the analysis techniques, and then the documentation should be done in the agile environment. So the most important technique to elicit the requirements will be your user story writing workshops and the product backlog grooming sessions. Now the reason why I've split these two differently is because typically in the user story writing workshops, we kind of work with the PO just focusing on writing the stories, identifying the epics, writing the user stories, and coming up with some acceptance criteria for each of these stories. Now the product backlog grooming sessions are more formal in nature, where we also invite some of the tech leads, solution architect, or test lead and involve them in the discussions. It's always good to have some of those people in these product backlog grooming sessions so that they also get a flavor of what we are doing. You don't want to build the backlog in a silo where no one else knows what these stories are and what they are supposed to do. So again, user story writing workshops are very informal. They are typically written mainly by the BA and the POs, product owners, and you can keep a cadence to it. Maybe once a week you can do these sessions, or twice in a week, depending on the project complexity and your specific requirements of the project. But the product backlog grooming sessions are a little bit more formal, where you also invite your tech leads, your solution architect, your QA lead or a test lead, where you'll be writing these stories, or at least refining them and refining the acceptance criteria, explaining these stories to the audience. Now, the requirements walkthrough sessions are more about explaining the requirements to your team in the sprint planning meeting. Now, here you're not getting any new requirements or eliciting any new requirements, but you may identify some gaps or some missing requirements which the BA and the PO must be able to resolve these issues. So many times it has happened that in the sprint planning meeting, when you invite the tech leads, the developers and the testers, and when they take a look at the stories and the acceptance criteria, they may identify some gaps or some missing requirements, and that's when the business analyst and the PO, the product owner, must resolve those issues. So many times you may get some new requirements in these sessions. And the last one is your sprint review meeting. And the reason I put this is because sometimes when they see the product, I say they, that means the PO or your customer is seeing the product in your sprint review meeting, they may give you some new set of requirements. And that is another venue where the BA, business analyst, must make sure that he or she understands what these new requirements are, how they are helping the customers, and are there any conflicting requirements, or are we any duplicating the requirements. So you need to understand from those aspects. So you should always be on a lookout for these kind of things in the sprint review meeting. Now, as far as analysis goes, your main tools will be your business context diagram, your system context diagram, your process models, any of the UML diagrams, Unified Modeling Language diagrams, whether it's a use case diagrams, activity diagrams, state chart diagrams, or class diagrams. You can use any of those. Your user persona and extreme characters is a new concept being used in the Agile BA domain. And another important artifact will be your wireframes and markups. Now, wireframes and markups can be done by the business analyst, and typically I see a lot of times when the business analyst is given this responsibility to come up with the wireframes along with the user stories and acceptance criteria. Now, as far as documentation goes, you can come up with your epics. The main document will be your user stories, and along with the user stories, your acceptance criteria, which basically tells the audience when can you say that this story is complete. And I'll talk more on the acceptance criteria in one of the other videos. But these three things are very important in your documentation. Your epics, when you break it down into small components, they are called user stories. And then along with the user stories, you must write an acceptance criteria for each one of those stories. Now, in addition to these three documents, you can have n number of documents which you think your team will use, and it will be helpful for them to understand the system or the requirements. Now, it can be a use case documents, it can be your process narratives, your wireframe mockups, data dictionary, your business rules repository, or any other document which you think as a team, right, as a team thinks that it will be helpful to understand the requirements. So one big misconception is in Agile you don't need any documents. That is a very big or wrong, you can say, thought, or it's a misconception. So Agile doesn't tell you that you should not have any documentation. It simply says that you should create just enough documentation for the team to understand what needs to be done. So that's all for now, guys, and thanks for watching this video. So you can call us back on 703-200-9921. Email us on info@skillcubator.com. The website is www.skillcubator.com. So for all your training needs, please do call us. Thanks and bye.